Hey, how's it going? And I'm excited to bring you this tutorial today on saving our data from the block spotting game that we just made. I have a link to that tutorial in the description. This is a fairly advanced tutorial and it'll be covering a lot of kind of advanced concepts. But if you stick around and watch the whole thing, I think you'll learn a lot from it. I know I've kind of learned a lot and it's refreshed a lot of what I know just by making this tutorial. So where we left off, I have this game, right, where if I left click I can put down blocks just like Minecraft. It's a Minecraft game is what it is. And if I right click I can delete the blocks. The problem is if I escape the game and stop the game and come back, let's say tomorrow, and I hit play, well, there's no data saved. And that's a problem, right? No one's going to want to play Minecraft if all the buildings that they built are gone the next day. So we have to create the data structures to recreate the world. That's the bottom line. And I have a little map here of what we're going to do. This is just kind of an overview. So in the level blueprint, we're going to basically put a scripting in there to respawn. We're going to call to our game instance blueprint, and from that, which is going to call to here, we're also going to get our data to basically respawn the data back into our world. So that functionality is going to be in the level blueprint, the actual mechanics of respawning our world back into existence. We got our first person blueprint. We're going to need to modify some code there. So when we add a block, we're also going to need to add the instructions to add the data for that block. And when we remove the block, we're going to have to add an instruction in there to delete that data from the data structure. So when we add a block, we're going to add the data, and when we remove a block, we got to remove the data. So that has to be added to our first person. Then we're going to create a game instance blueprint, and that's going to basically implement our saved game functionality, which is its own separate blueprint. There's a specific blueprint just for saving game data, and that's what we're going to. So we got to create two new blueprints. One is a game instance one to create our saved game functionality. That's because this type of blueprint is persistent between levels, and when we turn the game on and off, this blueprint will always be there. And then we have to create a structure. So creating the structure is very easy. The save game blueprint is very easy. Modifying the first person is pretty easy. The level blueprint, the game instance blueprint, and the block are where we're going to have to do some scripting. There's a lot of direct blueprint communication going on there. And so just to summarize kind of what's going on, we've created the hard assets, the 3D blocks, but they do not persist in our game once it's over. To recreate what we need to store the data in a structure, and then that data specifically will get saved by the save game blueprint. In our level blueprint's going to call upon that data and use that data to repopulate our scene based on that data that we save. So we have to create data structures and functionality necessary to restore the game as we knew it. And it can be a little tricky, and there's a lot of blueprint communication, direct blueprint communication. So you're going to see a lot of that going on in this tutorial. So let's get started and get going. So the first thing we're going to do is create our data structure. This is very easy to do. We're just going to right click, go to blueprint structure, and we're just going to call this st underscored block data. And that's exactly what it is. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to dock all of these up here on the menu so that I don't forget the names of them, because it can get confusing about there's so many things. So we're going to click add variable. When you see there's actually two variables here. What variables do we need? Well, we need to remember what we had. So we're going to need a class reference. So we're going to go block class here. And we need a reference to our BP block. So that's what we're going to search for here. We're going to search for BP underscore block. This one right here. But we want not the object reference, a class reference. It doesn't always take, it always does this to me. BP block, when I click on it, it doesn't. I have to do it twice, and then it finally goes. And this is just a single, and it's purple. Just remember that color. A class reference is purple. And then the next thing is we just need to know what is the location of the block in 3D space. So we know what it is. It's a BP block class. And then the other thing is where is it? Where was it? And then that is going to be stored as a vector. So again, we have to double click it twice. And now that's stored. I can save that. If I come to the default value, I can just set this on the BP block and save it again. No asterisk. And we are done with our block structure data. We're done. Now we're going to create the blueprint to save data. And this is a specialized blueprint made just for saving game data. And this is very easy to do too. So we're going to right click, go to blueprint class. We're going to search for save game. It's right there. And we'll go select. I've done some tutorials on this already, so this should be somewhat familiar. But taken all together, this is a little more advanced because of the data structures being saved. So I'm going to call this BP underscore saver. And that's all I got to do. And within here, I just need to make a reference to our structure. That's all I got to do. So I'm going to double click into it. And I'm going to come over here to variable. And I'm just going to search for that data structure we just made, the st underscore block data, this one right here. And I'm going to call this, so I don't get confused, new var is not a very good name. I'll hit F2, and I'm just going to call this blocks. So I know that's what it is. And then over here, it's not a single, it's going to be an array, because there's going to be a bunch of them, thousands and thousands of them. So it's going to be a lot of them, a big array. And then we'll go save. And believe it or not, that's all we have to do there. So that's so far so good. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create our game instance. So what we're going to do, a blueprint for our game instance. And this is just a blueprint that's going to hold our saved game functionality, because this is a persistent blueprint that lasts pretty much forever. It's permanent. You can think of it as permanent. So we're going to right click, go to blueprint class, and we're going to type game instance. And it's this one right here, and go select. And it's a blueprint, so we're going to name it BP underscore game instance. And this is where we have some scripting to do. So I'm going to double click into it and dock it up here. I'll go ahead and save it. This kind of, it goes off of some other tutorials I've done on saving game data. So there is an interesting event node in here called event init, event initialize, and this gets called even before begin event play does. So it's almost like a construction script. And here we go. So the first thing we're going to do before the game even starts is we want to know if there's any saved data, because we need it. And if there isn't any, then we want to create a folder to put it in. First thing is, do we have any stored data? It'd be like someone coming into a blank world saying, is there any pre-existing information we need to have? And if there is, then let's implement it. So there's a node specifically for that, and it's called does. It's actually like a question. Does save game exist? And here's the thing that's interesting about this, is that we're just doing this from the very beginning, and there is no file name for our saved game data to be in. So let's just go ahead, and it wants us to name that file, the file that data will be saved in. Just so for consistency, I'm going to create a variable, and I'm just going to call this saved data name. You don't have to name these exactly what I'm naming them. You can, whatever makes more sense to you. This is just going to be a string, and it's not public. And I'm going to set it to, I'm just going to call this my storage, but you could call this data file whatever you want to call it, but it just needs to be named the same. That's why I'm creating this variable, because otherwise I have to type it in 3 or 4 different times, and there's a chance I could make a typo, and I don't want to take that chance. So that would be hard to figure that out. So I'm just going to go get that and plug it in there. And basically it's the same as if I wrote the name in, but it's already written. I don't have to keep rewriting it. So then there's that. So now we're going to come to basically a fork in the road, and we're going to ask the question, does the save game exist? And so to do that, that's going to be require a branch node. So we press B and left click, and that's going to be our condition is, does save game file exist? And if the game file does not exist, then we want to create it. So we pull off of here, and there's a node just for that, and then go create save game object right here. And the save game class is our BP saver. And then what we're going to do here is we're just going to go ahead and promote this to a variable. So we have a reference to this, our BP saver up here. So And basically that just contains our data. Think of that as our game data. And we're going to right click this and go promote to variable. And I'm just going to call this BP save ref, so that I know that that's a BP, a blueprint reference to our blueprint saver. Okay, and I'll compile and save that. Now on the top branch, if the data file does exist, if this data file that we named over here, the my storage, does exist, then we want to go ahead and load it. And there's a node just for that too. So load game from slot here. And then rather than me typing in the name, I'm just going to drag this variable over, get it, and plug it in. So I know it's going to be the same and I didn't misspell anything. And then we're going to cast to our BP saver up here. So we're going to drag off of here and go cast to BP saver. And the object is going to be here. The return value goes in there. And then we're going to drag off of here and go set. And just plug this into there. And this into there. So either way, we're going to compile and save. If we did something wrong, we're going to get an error. But we're not going to get an error. So that either way this goes, whether the file's there or not, we're going to set that object reference to this blueprint up here. Either way, the logic goes. So we're done there. This part was very tricky for me. I don't know why, but it was. I had to do this like 20 times before I finally got it. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to create two events, and one is to add block data and one is to remove block data. And this will be called from the first person blueprint. So we're going to go add custom event here, and this is going to be called add block data, because that's exactly what it is. Let me camel back this. Add block data. And then let's go ahead while we're at it and we'll add another one. Add custom event. And this one is going to be called remove block data. So every time a block is created, we want that data added to, and every time a block is removed, we want that data associated with that block removed too from our list. So our data stays current. So then what we can do is just get this reference here that we have to our BP saver, because that's where our data is going to be. And what we're going to do is we're going to get, that's an array. There should be an array in there called blocks. So we go blocks, get blocks right here. And it's array because you can see the box. And we're going to add, since this is add block data, we're going to drag off of here and search for add. And I just noticed one thing I overlooked here is I need to add a reference here on our event to our data structure. So click on the add block here and come over here. And we can just leave it named new parameter. It doesn't really matter what it's called. We just need to reference our ST block data here. So ST block data right here. We need that parameter there. And I need to do the same thing. I can compile that. I need to do that here too, is add that. It's already comes in that way. So compile and save. So this needs to be in there because there's this pin here that we have to plug into, and there needs to be an input there. Okay, so now we're almost done with this, believe it or not, thank goodness. There's a node called save game to slot. So every time a block is added, the data bank, the data structure will be updated. So go save game to slot. Let's see, save game to slot right here. The slot name again is going to be here. Get that. I'm going to plot that in there. And the save game object is going to be from our, so let me pull this down here, is going to be on this reference here. It's on our save game data right there. That's right. And then the last thing is, I can pull this down a little bit more. And we want to do this again for the remove data. This is just updating, so save game to slot here. And the same thing. I can kind of just pull off of here rather than getting another node. Same thing. This goes in here like that. And then this is kind of going to be doing a little bit of a home run here. This is going to go into... Oh wait, one more. Forgot. Sorry. We need to remove this. So dragging off of here, we're going to go remove item from the array. So you can see what I meant about tricky, right? Okay. So remove. And now we're going to put this in, this pin in there, and this pin into there. And then this will go right up here like that. And that's basically, I feel like I'm building like a work of art or something. But that's basically the save game functionality all right there. We don't get any errors when we compile that. And this is why I say it's a little tricky. And if you don't understand it 100%, you just keep redoing it and eventually will make sense. So, but thank goodness we are done with that. And that completes our save game functionality. And you can see why there's not a ton of tutorials necessarily about this, because it is kind of involved. So we're done with that. So we're about 40%, 50% of the way through. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to actually create the ability to respawn back in based on our game data now that we have this logic all set up. So we're going to go into the level blueprint here, and we're going to right click and we're going to go on event begin play right here. Let me zoom in there a little bit. And we're going to, this is interesting, we're going to be doing this several times more. And you'll see the value of storing the save game functionality in the game instance blueprint, because we can get it very easy. Get game instance right here, and we can get this from everywhere, anywhere. And then once we have that, we can cast to our BP game instance right here, and we can go ahead and hook that up like that. And then once we have that linkage, this is kind of interesting because we're kind of almost doing a double communication, because this has a reference to this in here. So this game instance has a reference to the saver. So interestingly, what we're doing is we're actually almost like double dipping here. So we're establishing a connection to this blueprint, but from that blueprint we can get a reference to this blueprint. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to pull off of here and go get BP saver reference right there to that blueprint right there. And then once we have that reference, we can get our block data, our block array. So we can just go blocks, get blocks right here. So it's interesting how you can go in double levels of blueprint communication. It's really interesting. Okay, now we're going to do a for each loop. So we're going to drag off of here and go for each loop, because we're going to cycle through the array, this array right here. And so we have our array right there, our block data right there. And basically it's grabbing our data from there that we've stored. We're going through our game instance, we're going into the blueprint saver, we're getting the block data, and now we're going to cycle through all that data to reconstruct our game as we knew it. Now interestingly, if we see this, it says array element here. If we click this, we can split that pin open more. And notice how it got purple? So then the last thing that we need to do here is I can click and search for spawn actor from class. Spawn actor from class right here. And this is just going to go in there, and this is going to go in there, and location is going to go in there, and it does an auto convert for us. And then one thing I like to do, just for it's gratifying to see, is I'm going to just do a print string here. And print string, and we're just going to say item, I'll just say block restored. Okay, so then that's that. And that takes care of this is the actual mechanics of spawning our game as it was back into existence. There's one other thing, and I don't want to forget this before I get too far, is we created this game instance here, and we actually need to create a reference to it. So if we come in here and go to project settings and we go to maps and modes, you'll see where it says game instance class. We need to set that to our BP game instance. Don't forget to do that. Okay. Now, believe it or not, we only have 2 more things to do and we're done. Wow. A lot of that's why I said I wasn't kidding when I said it's more advanced. So we're going to go into our BP first person here. And the first thing we want to do here is establish a connection to our game instance. So we're going to do that. The best place to do this is on this event begin here. It says we need to reference our game instance, our BP game instance. So I can zoom in here. I'm going to press Alt and disconnect this. And again, this is the beauty of the game instance. I can just go get game instance. And you can store anything in this game instance blueprint that you want. I mean, I don't know if we can store crypto in it, but so here we're going to drag off of and go cast to BP game instance right there. And then we can promote this to a variable. And I can call this, well, it's called as GP game instance. I'll just leave it named that. It's getting kind of messy up here. I guess this got messier than I thought it would. So let me pull this back here. And then we'll drag this event down here like that. And then we're just going to go ahead and pop this into here. And that sets a reference for us. I see it looks like we already have a reference, but we're going to go ahead. I think that's an old reference. It looks like I don't know where that came from. I've done this a couple times in here before, so that might be a vestigial remains left over from another time. So the last thing we need to do now, there's a couple little things. Okay, so here is the left click to create the initial block right here, right? This functionality right here creates the initial block. But now what we need to do is when the block is created, also update our data structure so that the file gets updated. It's almost like something's born and then we're creating the birth certificate. So you can think of it that way, that this is the block has been born, but then we need the birth certificate to bring it back as it was. So what we're going to do here is if we pull off of here, we should be able to get something called make st block data right here, this node here, and then off of this node we actually got to come over here and get our reference. So we got to get our reference here and get this, and then off of here we can get out our block data. So here we go, add block data right here, and then this is going to go into here, and then this is going to go into where it says new parameter, which is basically our block data input. So we'll click save, compile and save on that, and that takes care of that. So this is basically going to create our block and then update our data, call to update our data that we just did in our BP game instance. Okay, so there's that. Now to call for the other, there's a call down here already to our BP block, and this is believe it or not, this is the last part of this. So the last section of code we got to do is on the BP block right here, and this is a little bit more involved just because I don't know, it is. We have to put the code before we destroy it. If we destroy it, there'll be nothing to record. So it's like we're going to hit Alt and disconnect that, and so all we have to do is write in the script to update our data to remove the block data from our list. So we've added the block data to our list, but now if we remove the block, we got to remove the block data from the list, from the structure. So to do that, again, we're going to right click and go get game instance, because that's kind of like our portal into everything. And off of here we can go cast to BP game instance right here, and we can just plug this in right there like that. And then once we have this, we can say, we should be able to say remove block data, this one right here. So we'll make a call to do that whole thing. And of course, we've got this new parameter that we have to update. So on this one, we're going to actually, since we're in the BP block and we're talking about the block itself, we're going to get a reference to the block itself. So we're going to search for just self. So we're going to get a reference to the BP block itself. From this self reference, we want to get the class. So we just get the class. And you'll notice how it's purple again, right? And once it's purple, that means that we can get to our structure because that's a class reference. So then we can pull off of here and go make st block data again here. And you see how it has our data in there. And then we just need to update the location of the block. So that would be where the default, because the static mesh is a child of the default root scene, we can just pull on the default root scene and get its world location. So go get world location right there, and then just pop that into there, and pop that into there. And now that has all of our data, and then that is going to go up into our new parameter here right there. I guess rather than I'm calling it, I could have called that blocks instead of new parameter, but anyway, that's what goes in there. And then all we have to do is hook up our destroy actor, and that's it. This will remove a block from our data list, basically from our data structure once it's been destroyed. It'll be called from the first person blueprint over here. From the first person blueprint over here, it's going to be called here. If I double click that, you'll see it calls over here, and then it's going to call to the game instance, and it's going to say, hey, remove this data from your list because we're getting ready to destroy that thing. So it's almost like it's putting out murder orders, a death certificate in advance, and then killing the guy. So it's kind of interesting. Now, if I did everything right, this should work. Let's cross our fingers and see. If you've stuck around this long, thanks. Okay, so anyway, let's hit play and see if it works. So I come over here and I put a block down, and I put a block down, and I put a block down, back up, put a block down there, just putting blocks wherever. Now let's say I delete a couple. I'll delete that one, and I'll delete that one. Now I quit the game. Let's see how many blocks that is. It looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 blocks. So let's escape and hit play. And look, 6 blocks came back. And that, my friends, is why I don't do blueprint scripting that much. It's a little bit of work, right? I wouldn't say it was that easy. I'd say this was kind of in difficulty level. But see how much there is to know, the little ins and outs and all that stuff you need to know to get this working. Who would know all this stuff? It just takes time. It's just time and frustration, actually. So anyway, if you found this helpful, I do appreciate it if you subscribe. It just helps me feel like I'm not completely insane and I am doing something that people find of value. But anyway, take care, have a great day, and I will talk to you next time.